Hello, my name is Rick Curci, and this is the first ever Controller Conscience podcast. I told you guys I wanted to do a video podcast, and because I wanted to get a little bit more professional, everybody in the world does Let's Plays and videos that I have been doing. I want to separate myself from the pack. So I wanted to do this in addition to some other videos that I have planned that I will be doing in the future. One of those videos is called a spoiler chat, because everybody plays games, they want to talk about it with their friends, but they want to avoid the spoilers. One of those games, this is actually the game I was playing when I actually thought of this idea, was The Walking Dead Season 2. You really can't talk about that game without getting into spoilers, so I figured, you know what, I do want to talk about that game in depth. Maybe I'll have some people that have also played the game that I'll talk to, and I'll do the video with them. But spoiler filled, it's going to be, you know, talking about games and not worrying about spoilers, just talking about what was awesome. And I kind of want to do that, including a new video series that I thought of that is called The Story Of. So people who want to jump into a gaming franchise like Halo or like Assassin's Creed that don't know what the story of the previous games were, let's say for example they wanted to jump into Halo 5 but they don't know what happened in the previous games, then these videos will show them what happened in Halo Combat Evolved, what happened in Halo 2, what Halo 3, Halo 4, so that when they jump into Halo 5 they're not completely cold and they know what's going on and they are in the loop. So those are the couple of videos that I have been planning. There is another video that is in the works, but it keeps, you know, we're still working on some of the scheduling with that, but when that comes out, I will let you know. I don't know where it's going to pop up. We're still working on that as well. But there are some things that I may have forgotten to mention in last week's We Talk episode that recapped E3. One of those things was Bloodborne, which is a PlayStation 4 exclusive. It was directed by the same director who did Demon's Souls and Dark Souls. So I am expecting it being the similar gameplay. And I have played Dark Souls, so it is something that somewhat interests me. And it's also something that Sony was very excited about at E3, and I totally forgot to mention it. It wasn't even in my notes or anything. But what was in my notes that must have gotten deleted, because I would have talked about it if it was still there, was Ori and the Blind Forest. I wanted to talk about that. It was at Microsoft's press conference. I thought the trailer was incredibly beautiful. It had such like a sad tone to it. We'll get to that in a second. And also, there are some Titanfall updates that I kind of want to get to at some point in the show. But also, I want to talk about some things I didn't really have time to elaborate on, mainly Destiny. I'm intrigued by the hype of that game. I don't personally get the hype, so I decided to do a lot of research on it. I watched a lot of videos just trying to see, maybe I missed something that really like hooked other people that didn't hook me. So I'll talk about that. I want to talk about Assassin's Creed Unity. I kind of breezed over some of the concerns that I have, but I want to maybe focus on it. More or less tear apart what Assassin's Creed series, what it started as, and then what it evolved into. So breaking down each game, some of the strengths, the weaknesses, what they did right, what they did wrong, and some of the changes that they may have made. And then also there's some Halo 5 info we found out pertaining to a particular character rather, in the Halo 5 game, as well as the live productions that are going to be going on. And also wanting to address the cinematic or CGI trailer that we saw at E3. Not the one where the Reds and the Blues are going at each other for the multiplayer. This was a different one. So I wanted to get into that. I want to talk about Bloodborne first, which is a game that is being developed by From Software. It is being directed by, like I said, Demon's Souls and Dark Souls director, and I'm going to butcher this guy's name, Hidetaka Miyazaki. I'm going to put his name in a graphic in about this general area. But here's the description from PlayStation.com. It says, introducing Bloodborne, the latest action RPG from renowned Japanese developer From Software, exclusively for the PlayStation 4 system. Face your fears as you search for answers in the ancient city of Yarnam, now cursed with a strange endemic illness spreading through the streets like wildfire. Danger, death, and madness lurk around every corner of this dark and horrific world, and you must discover its darkest secrets in order to survive. Now, if you're familiar with Dark Souls and Demon's Souls, you know that these games are built to be hard by design. They are meant to be hard. They're meant to frustrate, and it is a game in which it has such a learning curve. It's such trial and error. Like, you're going to die many times. In fact, I'm almost convinced that these games were made so that people could play them, put these videos up on YouTube, just because to see people rage out in something. Obviously, that is not the sole reason of this game. This game has story, more or less, but, you know, it is all about the gameplay. It is such like a higher tier of difficulty. Like, I've never played anything that was that hard before. There are really hard games out there, But this one is just one of those games that it just takes the, for me, it was the hardest game that I've ever played. Here's a little bit of a trivia because I knew that Bloodborne was something I'd heard before. I did research. It is actually a disease that is carried by blood. So, in Dark Souls, the big premise of that is that there's this curse on the land and people who die become these like undead creatures, and those undead creatures are coming after you. And, in Bloodborne, it seems like there's this disease that's going around. And if you've seen the trailer looks creepy as hell. There's like these monsters, these like zombie dogs, and then there's this guy with this big ass sword, and it looks really good. And like I said, Sony very, very excited to actually announce it and reveal it. It is a PlayStation exclusive. So you know what, the PlayStation 4, I wanted this out of E3, and we kind of got it. I wanted both the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 to have exclusives that would make me want to buy those specific systems. And it seems like, to me, that actually happened. Those two systems actually delivered on exclusive content, or even some exclusive titles that make me want to buy it. There's Scalebound for the Xbox One. Scalebound is a new IP. I should know the developer of this, but I'm blanking out on it. Platinum Games or something. I think that's what it is. I should definitely know this, and I'm gonna look it up real quick. But no, that was a game that also impressed me just because of the fact that like the trailer was like this guy is running around, he gets encountered, he's in this forest, and then excuse me, I'm looking this up right now. But he's in this forest, and then he gets encountered by this dragon. This is all CGI, and then he's like, oh crap, and then this monster comes up from behind him. And at that point, yep, it's Platinum Games. I am smart. And then we find out that the dragon is actually the buddy's friend, or the person's friend, his buddy, blah, 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 blah. And they actually start kicking the monster's ass, and it's really cool. And Platinum Games has done some pretty impressive stuff, some pretty cool stuff. So stuff I'm very excited about, and I really can't wait for that. But also Bloodborne for the PlayStation 4. Both of these systems have good exclusives that would make me want to buy one or the other. So I'm happy that we got that. I don't have a PlayStation 4, but now I have more reason to actually go ahead and get it. So that's basically Bloodborne in a nutshell. It is a game that I am looking forward to, and a game that I would like to play. But another game I would like to play, and again, I completely forgot to mention this as much as I would have wanted to, Ori and the Blind Forest. This trailer, when we saw this, it's super sad, yet super beautiful. It just looks good. I think the music was incredible. It has like this giant eagle that comes in. It starts with the birth of the character Ori. It's like this really cute looking creature, and it's actually this forest spirit. So, it has this giant eagle come in, and then it like kicks up the pace of it where it's showing the platforming, and at the end of it, it has like this death, and I'm like, oh no, it died. And I was like, but God, man, it was a really well made trailer that like, it hooked me. I looked at it and I was like, that looks so good. And I couldn't wait to play, to at least get my hands on it. What's interesting about this game also is that it is, first of all, it's a Metroidvania style game. So I think a lot of people were happy about that. The story is apparently a huge part of this game. Like, the story of Ori coming of age, that was the phrase that they used. And by they, I mean Moon Studios. Moon Studios is a small studio of like 4 to 8 people, but it's being developed by these people in different they're spread all around the world. It's like you have some in America, you have some in Germany, some in Austria, some in Israel. And I'm like, that's amazing that they can, like, even though they're so far spread around the world, they've been developing this game for 4 years, and yet they're coming out with this kind of quality. And I'm just like, I'm so excited about Ori and the Blind Forest. And, it takes inspiration from Super Meat Boy in terms of its platforming. There is an ability tree, so like some skills you can use. There is a combat system to this game. It looks like it has like an extensive amount of explorability to it in a way, and I kind of hope that that's the case. I mean, this game looks awesome. I think the art style for this game is amazing, and I think it looks really cool, and I'm really interested to try it out. But with this abilities, you get more powerful as you progress, and Ori basically becoming, I assume, would end up becoming this like huge badass forest spirit. And I can't wait. Like I said, I keep saying this, but I can't wait to try out that game because it just looks so good, and it's all hyped up now. And I'm like, I'm totally buying it. Like, I'm totally buying into the hype, what I'm saying. So, Ori and the Blind Forest looks awesome. I think it's impressive, considering the people who have been developing it. But I want to get into a little bit of Halo 5 Guardians. I mean, we found out recently that the character on the box art, I'm assuming it's box art, with the, I'm going to say the announcement art or the reveal art for Halo 5 Guardians. There was another Spartan on the top, and it had the mirror image of Master Chief down at the bottom. And we find out the name of the Spartan, and the name is actually Locke. And then we find out that Nightfall, that is going to be coming out, is the live action series that they're currently filming, that is going to be coming out with the Master Chief collection. That is actually going to give a backstory into Locke, and I'm like, awesome, because then we're going to know about this guy going into it. And then Spielberg's production is going to be, I think, more or less being more closer to the events that build up to Halo 5 when that game releases in 2015 next year. So I guess that one might star Master Chief, but I think Locke is starting to become like a protagonist, or no, I'm sorry, not a protagonist. He's starting to become an antagonist, or at least that's the impression that I'm getting, where he's like hunting Master Chief, because I feel like Master Chief has gone rogue while he's, I don't want to spoil the end of Halo 4, but at the end of Halo 4, you can understand why Master Chief is now looking for something, and what he might be possibly looking for, and because of that, he might be going rogue, and because of that, Locke might be going after him. But in the cinematic trailer, it shows Master Chief on a ship. He has this bomb, and then he jumps off. If you recognize the scene, if you played Halo 2, it's the ending of the first mission where Master Chief has to take the Covenant bomb to a Covenant ship. So you see that thing play out where he takes the bomb, he sends it to the ship, and the ship blows up. Master Chief is all like in space and everything. And you hear Keith David, who's the voice of the Arbiter in the original trilogy. He's basically telling Al, like, if you want to understand this guy, you need to walk through his shoes. You need to have lived in his shoes. And I get that was sort of like the build up to the Master Chief collection, where it's like, here, you need to relive everything that Master Chief has essentially gone through. And from there, you know, understanding where his mindset is now. But then you see like Locke in like in his visor and stuff, how like he is, you see the reflection of the Arbiter. And I'm like, is the Arbiter going to return in Halo 5? Which I think would be awesome, because I love that character. I don't know. I mean, I'm super excited for Halo 5, as everybody knows. And then we'll see what comes from there. But I'm looking forward to more stuff. I can't wait for the Master Chief Collection to come out. It was the most exciting thing that I did when I was playing, or the most exciting thing at E3. So going from there, I wanted to get a little bit into Destiny, because as I said before, I'm intrigued by the hype of Destiny. I just don't get it. I don't get why so many people are into this game. And, you know, it looks impressive. It looked impressive early on. I'm not saying the game looks bad. I think it's going to be good. It's going to appeal to certain people. It doesn't appeal to me. But everybody that I have talked to that has played the alpha is starting to say, like, maybe it's not so great. Like, I mean, like I said, when the game first launched, or I'm sorry, not launched, but when it was first announced and they started showing gameplay of it, the game looked good. It had kind of like a Borderlands feel to it, in the way in which that it would have like its combat. It would go after mobs, and then it would also have, like, you would get like loot, and it was all about that questing. It was like an MMO, and it's not something that I, as a gamer, is something that I enjoy. And I really never got into that kind of gaming. That's why I never really got into Borderlands, or why I never really got into MMOs. And it seems to be what Destiny is starting to shape into. And so from there, it was like getting away from me. It's just not the kind of game I was into. But then it was just like everybody was saying, like, this is going to be the next best thing. And I'm like, why though? Why is everybody so excited? And the reason why they were saying that, according to them, was like, it can't be explained in words. It needs to be experienced. The reason why we're saying that this game is awesome is because we have played it, and we know in order for you to understand, you need to have played it. And I'm like, I guess, but from what I've seen, I just don't get the hype. I mean, it is a highly expensively made game, over, I don't know if it's over, but it's about $500,000 to have made. But from people who have played the alpha, they are saying that it's not good. Like, Peter Dinklage's performance wasn't all that great. The story isn't very compelling, and that the AI is just dumb, just generally dumb. And like, those are all things that I'm like, those would put me off. Like, why is that going to eventually pull me in? And then there was footage of the multiplayer that just looks like a general FPS game. Like, it doesn't look like it's anything special. It lacks an identity. Because here's the thing, is like, if we were to take, I believe I mentioned this in the into the We Talk recap video, but if you take Call of Duty, you take Titanfall, and you take Battlefield, each of them has its own identity. Call of Duty basically set the standard. So, I mean, like, even though technically it doesn't necessarily have an identity, the fact that it doesn't is kind of its identity, because it's kind of like the groundwork in which everybody else builds it, but it's like, it has its own feel, and like every other game, every other FPS game is like, you take that and then you build out from it, which is sort of like what Titanfall did. I mean, like, Titanfall took that gameplay and then they made it into something with their navigation, their parkouring, and their Titans, and it made it a very unique experience. And then Battlefield did that same thing, where they took that core general mechanic, the standard that was set by Call of Duty, and they said, you know what, we're going to expand it to be this huge thing where, like, there are 64 players and explosions are happening everywhere. You could destroy the environment, and each of those games has their own identity. And from what I've seen of the multiplayer demos that I've seen so far, there's really nothing compelling to me that makes it say that game has its own identity. It just seems like it's just going through the motions of being an FPS, and for its own, you know, I guess because games kind of need to have a multiplayer in MMOs, because, you know, multiplayer and the competitive multiplayer is kind of traditional at this point. So it's just like, just because they have one and here it is, there it is. I hit my microphone there. So I'm really, like, not exciting. I mean, and then a lot of people were like, oh, well, there are issues, but this is an alpha, which I guess could mean that this is an earlier build of the game, but maybe it's not necessarily, you know, what it currently looks like right now. But at the same time, I'm like, maybe they're just calling it alpha because it is so early access. And if that's the case, this game launches in 3 months. If these problems aren't fixed right now, if this is actually the way the game looks right now, then you need to go ahead, and I'm talking to Bungie, that you need to go and you need to start working on fixing these issues right now, because you don't have a lot of time to do that. Mind you, I like Bungie. I liked Halo. But this game just, I don't get it. I'm not that interested in it. I mean, like, I'm not going to buy it at launch. I'm not going to pre-order it. It's going to be a game that I'm going to rent, and then I'm going to form my opinion on it from there. I mean, I'm going to say this again when I talk about Assassin's Creed, but I want to be wrong. I want to be wrong about Destiny. I want the game to be good. Like, I want to play it. I am going to play it, but when I do, I want to be like, I need to have this game in my library, so I'm going to buy it right now. But I really don't think that this game is going to... It could just be it's not appealing to me. But I've talked to other people that have felt the same way, that also liked Borderlands, and I'm just like, I just don't get the hype behind Destiny. I think it's way, 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 way overhyped, and I don't know if it's going to work. I honestly think that they're going to make a profit off of Destiny, but then they're talking about it being like a 10-year game, and I'm like, I don't get that. I don't see it actually being a 10-year game, and I don't know if it's actually going to reach that scale. I think that, you know, I think they're going to do a sequel when it eventually comes time to do that, but I don't know, man. I need a game that has a story, and I need it to be challenging, and I don't need it to be just like the gameplay is so generic and so the same. Like, it's all about questing and killing mobs and looting, and I'm just like, that's not rewarding to me. It just doesn't get me to buy your game. So that's all I'm going to pretty much say on Destiny. So I want to kind of get into the new Titanfall update. Titanfall is going to be getting an update soon, and it's going to be introducing 2 new game modes, and those 2 new game modes are Wingman and Marked for Death. Now, Marked for Death is actually, it has 1 player on each team being selected to be killed. So, like, you have a kill, like, you got to go kill this guy, or you got to go kill that guy, depending on what team you're on. And there's like a time limit. So, if one of those players dies, or the time runs out, then 2 new players are selected. So it's supposed to be keeping up the pace of the game. Like, it's supposed to be keeping the fast pace where everybody's going to be going after this one guy. Kind of reminds me of Regicide in Halo 4 in a way, because Regicide, what it did was it would target the person who was number 1, but it was like a free-for-all mode. So it's marking a single player, and then you have like this blip over your head where it's like, hey, come kill me. And then everybody starts going after you. So I get that, because I loved Regicide, except 343 decided to take that off their playlist, but I already did a rant about Halo 4 in their playlist in a previous video, so I'm not going to get into it right now. But, I'm excited, because I liked that kind of game mode, and I'm looking forward to this one. And then apparently, Wingman is last Titan standing. He said it's going to be, instead of 6v6, it's going to be 2v2. So I don't know, I think I might have heard somewhere else where it's going to be 2v2v2. So it actually has those 6 players, or possibly even more than that, where it's like they're going to fit in the 12 players with all 2v2v2. But I think, I don't know if it's going to be like that, because then it'll be really chaotic. I mean, I would be totally okay if it was just the 2v2, which I think that it actually is. But I play Titanfall with some friends. I have one friend that I play all the time with, and I figure, that'd be awesome, because we're all about strategy, we're all about calling out targets, so I think that'd be definitely a cool experience to get into. We're going to be getting new burn cards and customizable Titans, which is something that I thought was going to come with the Expedition DLC, but did not. So I was really disappointed when I didn't get that, because I wanted that when the game eventually launched, and I talked to one of my friends who said that the game was supposed to have it, but they just, because of the time period that they had to get the game out on, the deadline was coming up and they didn't want to delay it. So they just decided, you know what, it's not that important. Instead of just putting out a crappy version of it, we're just going to hold off on this aspect of the game and then release you with that. So, I mean, customizable Titans didn't break the game. I still love the game, but I kind of wish it had it, and it seems like we're going to be getting it now. Also, it's going to be doing better matchmaking, but of course, Titanfall has always been messing around with its matchmaking, trying to put you into a match with people who are similar skills than you, or who has similar skills as you. But I think that lately, basically, the matchmaking has just been pairing you up with people of similar levels. I'm a Gen 6 pilot right now. I'm about to be Gen 7 whenever I decide to finish up those challenges. But it always pairs me up with people who are of similar prestige. And I have been playing Call of Duty for a game that has been doing a prestige system, and I have been playing Titanfall long enough with the similar system to know that prestige and levels do not translate into skills. So, I mean, you could be jumping around with a bunch of Gen 10s, but they're not good at playing the game. Some of them are. Some of them are really good at playing the game. They play the game religiously. That's why they got to Gen 10 so quickly. I am a more casual gamer, or not really a casual gamer, but I play it like a casual gamer, where every once in a while I'll just pick it up whenever I want to waste time. But it is a game that I continue to return to, and it is a game that I enjoy. So also, another game that I kind of wanted to talk about, just because, like I said before, Homefront Revolution is based in Philly, and I'm from Philly, so it's just I wanted to see games represent the city legitimately, let's say. Because games like, let's say Grand Theft Auto 4, they had New York City. Games like Grand Theft Auto 5, who has Los Angeles. Games like Infamous Second Son, who did Seattle. Watch Dogs did Chicago. And you basically get the idea of what I'm saying from there. But, you want your cities to be well represented. And I want Homefront Revolution to represent Philly properly. And, but, and that's why I'm so excited for it. And the demo that was shown during E3, it looks legit so far. I'm like, okay, well, you've been in the area to know that that's the general idea, but I wasn't actually in Philly. You didn't really see much. It was more like you were outside the city, not necessarily inside the city, and you were in ghettos and stuff. And it's a very run-down, war-torn area. They talked about how different areas were going to have districts. Here's a yellow district. Here's the red district. The red district may become more hostile because, people aren't really supposed to be there. But in terms of graphics, the game looks really good, and it's the same world as the first game, technically, but they're focusing on new characters. This is a new story, and they're basically going from there. I mean, they're starting fresh, which is good, because I would want them to do that. And basically, the idea of this game is that they're trying to ignite a revolution. That is the tagline of this game, is to ignite the revolution. And I'm excited about that, because I'm just this is awesome. And these guys came over, they invaded, they took over America, and they set their home base in the birthplace of America, which is their sort of the rubbing it in sort of. And I think it's a well setting. It's really awesome, and I really want that game to be good. They talk about the freedom in the game, you can go where you want, you can do what you want, but I mean, the demo didn't really show that. I mean, it did, but I want to know, how much freedom do we have, and how open is this world, and how much stuff is actually filling in, because they said that there are side quests you can do. they actually showed how like they assaulted this base, and there's cooperative play involved. I think it's 4-player co-op, and how, you know, there's a stealth approach because it's sort of like a guerrilla warfare. You are behind enemy lines, and you need to adopt the same strategy in order to do that. So you're in this area, you're being put in, and you have your other players coming in, and they're blowing things up to distract people, and this is allowing another player to come in and go behind enemy lines so that they can either free a prisoner or something. And then you have your phone to tag stuff, like you tag a camera, or you tag some enemies, and then you could see them on your mini map. And I'm like, I like what I see so far. I just want to see more. Like, I want. And another thing in the thing was just like after they attacked, they pulled back, and then I was like, okay, that's sort of showing how like this is it's not necessarily a story mission, but it's an extra thing that you can do. And I just want the game to be filled with different stuff. Not necessarily like, yeah, the game's filled with side quests like that. And I'm like, yeah, but is that the only side quest that is filling the game? Or is there a wide variety of different things that you can do? Sort of like how Grand Theft Auto 5 did it. I mean, like, it's easy to mess up a game that is so open world. I mean, for example, like a Grand Theft Auto 5 that, you know, it has its story mission or it has its story missions that drive the story forward, and you play them in order to get further and make more progress. But it has like its stranger missions. It has its missions in which you can go into a taxi and pick up fares and do that kind of stuff. You can play golf, you can play tennis, you can go hunting and that kind of stuff. I mean, like, there's so collectibles. You can do so much in that game, and it's filled with so much stuff you can do. And a game like Assassin's Creed 3 that is so big, not ridiculously big, but it is a big world, but yet filled with nothing. There's nothing to do, and they tried to fill it with stuff, and it just wasn't enough. So I don't want Homefront Revolutions to do that, where they fill it with stuff that just isn't enough. Like, I want this to be filled with different amount of stuff. I mean, like, I feel like I'm doing something new every time. A game like Skyrim, where it's just like, if I don't have to do the main story, but I have full freedom to do whatever it is that I want to do. So those are games that either excelled in an online or in an open world, or failed in an open world game. So I want Revolution to do it right. Another cool thing that I saw was like they modded weapons. They could do that kind of like on the fly, where like they found like attachments around, and then they had their gun, and then they looked, and then they just started attaching stuff to their gun. Like they attached a reticle, they attached like a foregrip and stuff like that. And I'm like, that's cool. I really want to see that. So also, the game, like I said before, it has a lot of planning going into it because of its stealth and stuff like that. So I'm excited for this game. So far, what I've seen, I like. Let's just say that. So I'm excited for Homefront Revolution. I just want to see more of it. I want it to be more open and things like that. So now we're going to get into Assassin's Creed Unity. And I want to talk about the concerns that I have for this game. And generally speaking, I just wanted to break it down because I don't feel like Assassin's Creed Unity has enough, that it fixed enough throughout the series that has been pestering it to make me say that this game is the game that we all need to play. And I get it looks good, it has a good setting, it looks smooth, and I think the co-op is not a bad thing. I think it's cool, but I don't know if that's enough for me to say that this game is the best Assassin's Creed game ever. I don't think anybody is saying that either, but that's like the way that people are talking about it. They're like, this is really good. And I'm like, not to me, it isn't. So I wanted to break down, like I said, I want to break down the series. And we'll start with the first Assassin's Creed, where, like, you know, it was innovative. When I first saw the footage of this game, I was like, this game looks awesome. Like, it allows you to have freedom. You have the free running. You can climb up on the thing. And just, like, the combat looks really cool. And then I played the game and all that stuff. I was like, yeah, everything's cool in this game. This is different. This is innovating. But when you think about it, it's like Altair, who was the main protagonist, he was very boring. He was very bland. He really wasn't a very compelling main character. And then the story wasn't all that great. And then they had this present day timeline that kind of annoyed me, where it was just like the game kept pulling me out of me being a assassin. And I didn't like that. Like, the game was just like, all right, you've done several missions. I'm going to pull you out so we can force this story in your face. And I'm like, can we please stop talking so I can go be a killer again? That makes me sound really psychotic. But you get it. It was just like the game kept pulling me out. And this is something that would appear throughout the entire series, where the animus just keeps pulling you out. And I'm just like, why? Put me back in the world where I can have fun. Stop pulling me out. There was a repetitiveness to it, and I noticed this when I played it originally, where like you're doing the same thing in 3 cities. You're killing 3 guys in each city, and then you're beating up so many people, you're pickpocketing so many people, you're eavesdropping so many people, and it just got old. Like I said, the story really wasn't that great. I mean, like there was some attention to detail where like if you pickpocketed a letter and then you read the letter, there was like you could get a little bit more information on it. Like, let's just say, for example, you find out that one of the guards that are on the rooftop is missing because he's visiting some of his sick family members. And then it gives you a map of where all of those guards are going to be posted. So I like that. It allowed me to plan out a lot of my paths forward, and it'd be like, all right, so if I can get close enough to my target where I can kill him, I now have an escape route. Or if I do some prep work before I go into it, I'll clear off all of the roof guards. That way, when I try to escape through the roof, I won't have any trouble and I'll be able to get away faster. So I like that about the first game. But the combat was challenging at first. Like, you had to, like, time your strikes when they collided with other swords, and then you would hit the button, and then it would do, like, a cool thing to make you, that would allow the enemy to become open. But what was weird about the combat was just, like, you would be surrounded by these enemies, and they would all take their turns to fight you. And I'm like, that would never really happen in that situation. All those guards are going to come after you with their swords, and somebody's sword is going to hit you. It always annoyed me, and it never really stopped. It continues to happen. We're like, one guy, you're all surrounded, one guy's going to come in, he's going to take his turn, one guy's going to come in, he's going to take his turn. But then the game introduced it, that's a word. No, it's not. It introduced countering. So like, as soon as you saw the guy making a move, you would counter him and instantly kill him. And there was no other different enemy types. They would fix this later with Assassin's Creed 2, where, you know, they started introducing different enemy types. They started introducing some different combat mechanics, like the ability to taunt or disarm. And at that point, the game got a little bit better. Like, the combat wasn't perfect. They still had the I'm going to take my turn thing, but it was getting better. It was on the right track, and I liked it. And that's what Assassin's Creed do. It did, rather. It took all the mechanics that were, and all the missteps of Assassin's Creed 1 and made it better. I thought it had it had a better protagonist, the best protagonist of the series, had a fantastic storyline, it had a fantastic character development with Ezio, where he was a stupid, I don't want to say stupid, but he was like a arrogant child, and then, not necessarily child, but you do start in the game as a baby. But he's like a young adult who's arrogant. He's dumb, and, you know, he doesn't know how everything works. And then he becomes like this, he's slowly becoming a man. And by the end of the game, you become this respected, mature adult who is also a badass assassin. And I thought that they also changed up the stealth mechanics better. I mean, instead of, let's say, for example, instead of waiting for the group of monks to roll around so you can blend in with them, that you could blend in with any group of people. And I like that. It was just like, there was a stealthness to this game. And it's what made Assassin's Creed, because in the beginning of the game, of Assassin's Creed 1, they say hiding in plain sight is the way of the assassin. More or less, that's what they say. So it's like, I'm glad that, you know, the game is basing itself with its, you know, stealth approach. And, you know, it had its missions where you were going to have to do a stealth approach and things like that. So it wasn't repetitive either. It had that storyline. It made each assassination feel unique. Like, this was the backstory of this guy. It wasn't just like, here's the name of the guy you need to kill, now go kill him, and that was it. It was just like, you know, there was a reason why you were going after this guy. I thought the game had a fantastic villain in Rodrigo Borgia, and that was awesome. And, you know, Assassin's Creed 2 just essentially, even the present day timeline was, there was less of it, but it was more interesting than what it was. Like, it wasn't really that all compelling. Again, the game kept pulling me out of the experience, so I got more annoyed by that. And, you know, like I said, I mean, Assassin's Creed 2, it took the mechanics of Assassin's Creed 1 and just made it better. Then in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, they introduced chain killing, which made you feel more like a badass. And I was just like, okay, yeah, it makes you feel like more of a killing machine, but I feel like assassins shouldn't feel like they're starting to go away from the stealth approach. Like, I feel like assassins, they would like come up right beside you and then shank you, and that will be the way of the assassin in Assassin's Creed. So I would have liked that they did that, but instead they started changing it to be like this ultimate killing badass where they're just like cutting dudes up left and right, and that's not something I enjoyed, and I kind of miss. But they also introduced this really cool mechanic in which I call it the Brotherhood mechanic, where they you're able to recruit assassins, and then you can use those assassins while you're out in the world, and then you can send them on missions. And I like this. It was really in depth, and it made you feel like you were a master of this order that you were trying to rebuild. But it was awesome because there was a stealth gameplay value to this, because throughout the game you were in Rome, and I was originally worried that it was going to be based in one city, but then I like learned to accept it, because in the second game of Assassin's Creed, you had your hometown, you had this villa, and then as you gained more money, you could throw it into the villa and like sort of like renovate it and make it better, and you could open up shops in your town and things like that. They brought that mechanic back with the entire city of Rome, but you had to take it back. And in order to take it back, you had to take out these towers. But the area surrounding the tower was like, it was a hostile environment. If enemies saw you, they were going to come after you right away. And what was also cool was like you had to kill like this captain, and if the captain, or if you get spotted, the captain's going to run, and if he gets away, then you have to wait a certain amount of time before you can attack the tower again. So there was a stealth value to it. You had to be stealthy rather than just going through, while you fully could go right into that group of guys and just kill them, which is something I feel like Assassin's Creed really shouldn't do. Like, it should be like these assassins, they're like ninjas. Like, they're all about stealth, and that is when they're the most deadly. Not like, I am a badass and I will take anybody on, because you're all going to take your turns when you attack me, which is stupid. But instead, it's like, all right, I see that group patrolling. If I go and try to attack them, I'm not going to be able to kill them all before the guy gets away. I'm going to need to go up onto the roof and go around them, but there's a guy up on the roof. So what I would do is I would call in my assassin buddy, he would kill him, and then I would be able to go up to the roof, go around them, and then attack the guy like that. And I loved that about the game, and it was awesome, and it was cool, and the story of the game and the villain was okay, and the story of the game was okay. It wasn't bad or anything like that, but it was interesting, and I loved it, and I like Brotherhood a lot because of a lot of it. It also introduced multiplayer for the first time, and multiplayer was a very unique experience for me with Assassin's Creed, and it had its own unique feel. It had its own identity. You remember, see, like we're planning all this out. Like we're almost like we know what we were doing. But no, I mean, like, the multiplayer was definitely cool. It was unique. It is something that I still like about the series. Even though there wasn't really that much innovation throughout the games. I mean, it would eventually get there with Assassin's Creed Black Flag, but they would add in more game modes and stuff and take out chase sequences, which I personally wasn't a fan of, but I know other people think differently of that. But no, I mean, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood was definitely a good game. And then we get Assassin's Creed Revelations. And one more thing before we go on to Assassin's Creed Revelations. There was the one thing that annoyed me about Brotherhood, and that was that I felt like Ezio took a step backwards in his character development. I feel like at the end of 2, he was mature, he was respected, he was a badass, and then he became a ladies' man again in Brotherhood, and I was like, nah. But I wanted to talk about that. Like, I felt like it took a step backwards. Like, it sort of I didn't feel like the mature assassin I felt like when I was at the end of Assassin's Creed 2. But then Revelations comes out, and Revelations is a prime example of if you take a mechanic and you put it into a new game because it was well received and it worked well, it doesn't necessarily mean that game is going to be good. Because here's what they did with Revelations. They took the Brotherhood mechanic from Brotherhood and they put it right back into Revelations unchanged, except for the assassins looked different and it was in a different environment and the missions were different. And I was like, no, because you need to have innovated it, changed it a little bit, make it better a little bit. Sort of like what Assassin's Creed 2 did with Assassin's Creed 1. They took the mechanics and then they made it better. So I was upset about that. Like, I was just like, this game feels like the same game. The story wasn't all that compelling at this point in the game. Like, Brotherhood's present day timeline had more freedom of movement. I found out that I was spending more time outside of the Animus than I was in any of the previous games. But in Revelations, you were like, there was this ending in Brotherhood in the present day timeline that left on a cliffhanger, and I was like, I want to know what happens next. And then Revelations came out, and I didn't get that satisfaction. And then later on in the series, they would just brush off what happened, and I was like, what was that? So at this point, I'm like, you know what? I think the present day timeline is stupid. I don't care. I think we should stop it, and let's stop it. They would also introduce the hook blade in Revelations, which was something that they never brought back in the series. It was just like, nope. And then they had like these tower defenses, which were horrible, and I absolutely hated about it. there was so much wrong with Assassin's Creed Revelations, and like it wasn't new enough. And that's what I'm kind of worried that Unity is going to be. Like it had its changes, but it just isn't new enough. Like it's not unique. Assassin's Creed 3 would come around, it would change the free running a little bit, and I'm like, all right, maybe the free running is better. They got rid of that like puppeteering gameplay mechanic, and I always was annoyed about that. So I was happy that they did like the free running in a way that it makes sense. They introduced dual wielding for the first time, and I'm like, oh, this would be cool. And then the game came out, and I was like, oh, this is exactly the same. Literally nothing new. There is nothing you need to know about the combat when it comes to dual wielding than when not dual wielding. It is the exact same gameplay. It is the exact same of wait for the guy to make a move toward you as he takes his turn with all of his buddies standing around and watching. You're going to counter, and then after you counter, you can go on a chain killing spree, and you feel like more of a badass, even though you're an assassin that should be focusing more on stealth. Speaking of stealth, Assassin's Creed 3 made it better? Maybe, not really, not sure. Because instead of walking around waiting for these groups of people to meet up, and then those groups of people actually going on like a set path. Like I found out in Assassin's Creed 2, and I guess it happens in other games, but I couldn't really tell you, that, you know, you would have to like, there would be like a group of people here and a group of people here. And then as they got close, you could make the transition into one, but they would all like walk into like a circle. Like they had their own set path. And that always annoyed me about Assassin's Creed 2. But Assassin's Creed 3, like you could like go into, if there were enough people around, then you could blend in. You could blend in with as most as 2 people, which was something that I really liked about the game. And I think it made this multiplayer better in that regard. So, but then they did what I hoped that they would have done, and I respect the effort. It just didn't pay off. And what I mean is they took the Brotherhood mechanic and they tried to breathe some life into it. Instead of the assassins being this very generic random character, they ended up being, they had their own unique model, they had their own voiceover, they had their own story, they had their own unique mission when recruiting, and then they had their own unique abilities. You would think that this all would work, but it doesn't. Like it sounds cool on paper, but it didn't in game. And like one guy could like snipe people from afar. One guy could come in with other guys and they're all like dressed up as like guards, and then you would pose as like a prisoner, and then you would move in and pass enemy lines, and this other guy would come in more traditional and just like kill the guy that you're trying to kill. And I'm like, I guess, but I respect the effort, but I never used it. I never used it in Assassin's Creed 3. It was just like, it's gone now. You could still send those guys on missions, but it didn't feel like I was the master of the order. I felt like these were guys that were on the field that were helping me, and I wasn't really like helping them, give them a sort of like purpose in life, which is what I felt like I was doing in Brotherhood. And like these guys were being beaten down in the streets, and I helped them up, and I'm like, there is a better life than this. And then I introduce them to the life of an assassin, and then I see them becoming this badass assassin, and then they have this ceremony where they get like the traditional gear, and I'm like, it's like watching a kid at their graduation. And Assassin's Creed 3 didn't have that. The combat, again, like I said, is still generally the same. It introduced new enemies, but again, it's just like you're on the right track, but not really, like, because everybody's waiting for their turn and you go on a killing spree. And I don't know. I mean, it introduced naval combat for the first time, which was awesome. And there would be like, I feel like there were very few naval gameplay missions that you would go on, and there was one where you had to like take out either 2 or 3 ships, and I would wait until the last one, then I would restart the mission so I could go do it again, because I just wanted to get so much out of that experience. And then I would get that in Assassin's Creed 4, where they took the mechanic, and this is again like what Revelations did with the Brotherhood mechanic was wrong. They changed nothing, and the game just felt dull and boring. But what Assassin's Creed 4 did with Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag did with Assassin's Creed 3's naval combat mechanic is that they built the game around it. They made it better, and they made it to be a different feeling game. Like it felt like a different kind of game than any of the other games themselves. It's sort of the way Assassin's Creed 2 felt from Assassin's Creed 1. Like it felt like a different game, but it was still the same type of game. Like you were still doing the same thing and all that, but it felt so drastically different. And that's sort of like how Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag was. That's why I love Assassin's Creed 4 so much. It had a better protagonist with Edward. I thought Edward was a fantastic protagonist. The villain of the game, not really that great. I thought the story was better in Assassin's Creed 4, more or less. There were some missteps there. And I again, at this point, I don't care about the present day timeline. The most I cared about the present day timeline was in Assassin's Creed 3, but it took way too long. It took way too many games to finally get there. And again, it was just like, I'm doing a lot of stuff outside of the Animus when I just want to be inside the Animus doing stuff. The combat was still the same. They had instead of two tomahawks or or a tomahawk and a knife. I don't remember what it was that Edward had or Connor had, but Edward had two swords and he had like a bazillion guns and stuff. And I'm like, so this guy's not about stuff at all. Like he had his missions. You have those tailing missions and eavesdropping missions that I hated about the game. But the main idea is like this guy has a ship and he's gonna blast you, and I'm like, it's a pirate game. It's not an Assassin's game. It's a pirate game with some assassin like value to it. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just not. Again, they changed up the multiplayer in a way. It wasn't too serious of changes. Not really big, huge, awesome changes, but it was enough to be like, hey, we're trying to keep it fresh. Here's some new modes for you. I'm like, all right, cool. Then Assassin's Creed Unity comes around, and again, these are all impressions that I've gotten, obviously, from viewing somebody else do it, because I haven't actually gotten the experience from playing it, and I won't until October. But it introduces co-op. I'm not saying co-op is bad, but also, like, is each of those characters, because it's a 4-person co-op, are each of those characters going to have its own unique storyline? Are they going to have their own voiceover? Or are they just going to be these random guys that come in whenever somebody joins your game? And again, it's like, it replaces the multiplayer, and I love the multiplayer, and you guys changed the multiplayer in the previous game, and I like the changes, so it's like, why are you taking that away from me? Why not include it into the game? Why not just keep it? And I'm like, no. Oh, man, it wasn't good. And, I will give credit where credit is due, and I say this in the recap video, where, like, the game still feels like it is... It looks smoother, like it looks like the movements in the free running is smoother, and there was always an issue with the free running throughout the series where the guy had like a low wall and he would run up and then fall back down, run up, fall back down, but all you wanted the game to do, and it wasn't grabbing it, was that you wanted him to jump over the wall. And then there was a lot of times, and it did it in Assassin's Creed, and there was a moment in Assassin's Creed 4 where this thing came up where I was free running and then the guy like jumped into a bale of hay, and I'm like, no, keep running forward. But Assassin's Creed Unity looks like it's a lot more smoother with the free running. I think the setting for Assassin's Creed Unity is awesome. And I'm kind of glad, but I'm not 100% sure if this is going to be a thing, but I'm kind of glad that they might be getting rid of the naval combat, because, yeah, it was good, and I think that the best things of games should be in games, but also they did everything that they could do with the naval combat in Assassin's Creed Black Flag, and you're not going to get it better than that. And I think that we should move on and do something new, which is kind of what I feel like they're doing with Unity, with the co-op. But again, it's like it looks good, it looks smooth, and the setting is awesome. And I want to be wrong about this game. I just don't think the new changes are enough for me to be like, this game is going to be awesome and I can't wait to play it. This is a game just like Destiny where I'm going to rent it, I'm going to play it. But if it's not good, I'm not going to buy it. And that's going to suck for me, because I love Assassin's Creed and I've bought every Assassin's Creed game that has ever come out. And I would want this to be good. And I just don't feel like it's going to get pushed to that caliber of being one of the best Assassin's Creed games ever. And of course, the present day timeline is going to come back and I'm not going to care. But, so I started to ask myself, what is the perfect Assassin's Creed game? What would they have to do to make an awesome Assassin's Creed game? First of all, I think Assassin's Creed, as well as Call of Duty, suffers from being an annual game. But because these games are coming out once a year, they're being compared, and there's not much innovation. Like, let's say, for example, between Assassin's Creed 3 and Unity, the game looks awesome. Between Assassin's Creed 2 and Assassin's Creed 3, there are drastic changes. They feel like different kinds of games, more or less. So, I get it. So I feel like that we should stop making Assassin's Creed games for a while to be like, all right, let's end the story with Unity, and then when we come back to the game, we will have this brand new game, and it'll be like a few years, and then actually take the time to create a female protagonist, because one of the news stories that is happening is that many people were upset that the main character of Assassin's Creed Unity was not a female character, and that people wanted to be a female character, but then the developer said, you know what, that's going to be a lot harder. It doubles the production time. And some developers are like calling like, nope, that's not true. And others are like, yeah, it kind of is. So, okay, take the time to make a good Assassin's Creed game. Let's take a break from Assassin's Creed for a few years. Take the time to make a female protagonist, to make the game good, to actually spend time on some of the mechanics that you need to spend time on, like the combat, so that the combat isn't so mindlessly simple. Like, I feel like I want it to be challenging. We're like, I am an assassin who is best when he is hidden. I want the game to go back to stealth and be like, stealth is where you are at your best. And like, you can take advantage of a situation by being sneaky, and rather than being a dual wielding badass that can kill anybody in your wake. And I would rather that they do that. I want the protagonist to be good. I want the story to be good. I want the villain to be good. Obviously, those things are going to come with the good game mixture and ingredients and stuff like that. I think that it should take the smoother looking free running from Unity. I don't think that co-op is going to be bad. I think that co-op is an interesting change up on things. Like, they had co-op with Assassin's Creed Black Flag, but it really wasn't co-op. It was like this multiplayer mode that you could play with other people and you're not trying to kill each other, and we call that co-op. But I think that this co-op is a real co-op. I think it's something that the Assassin's Creed series kind of was overdue for. So I'm excited for that, and I think that they should bring that back. But also bring back the multiplayer, the competitive multiplayer that I loved about the series, that I think other people love about the series. And, you know, bring some life. I mean, also bring back the Brotherhood mechanic, more or less in its core. What it used to be in Brotherhood, what we saw it, what we loved about it. But also, like, try to give it a little bit of the love that AC3 tried to do, but without actually breaking the core mechanic down. So it's just like, we still use it because it is a useful tool. Also, one of the things that I liked about Assassin's Creed 2 was, like, there was a purpose to upgrading your gear. Like, I want the combat to be like, if I upgraded to a different sword, I could kill enemies quicker, rather than, it doesn't matter what sword I have, as long as I counter, this guy's going to die instantly. And also, one of the cool things I liked about Assassin's Creed 2 that I feel like other Assassin's Creed games don't do, they kind of do, but not really, you can still get away with it, is that as you recruit new armor, your health bar drastically increases. And again, this is something that they still do, but it doesn't drastically increase. You can get through the game without doing anything. So I mean, like, there is a lot. I think that also the game should have you carrying out your assassinations the way you would want, sort of like how Dishonored and Hitman does it, where like you can have like an accident happen, you can have something fall on the guy, or you can have like other people kill him, or like sort of like manipulate it, be like a real assassin, where like, or an assassin, like, I mean, or you could just go up and shank the dude with a hidden blade. I mean, like, I'm not saying you can't do that. I just think that, you know, the game should make you feel like more of an assassin rather than a mercenary, let's say. So, Assassin's Creed Unity and Destiny, both. I want those games to be good, but I have my concerns for them. Me personally, other people may think differently of me. People obviously do think differently than I do, and I think that that's going to be something that we're all going to have to just wait and see until the games come out before we can sit down and say to ourselves, you know what, maybe this game is good. And you know what? I'm excited for, I'm not necessarily excited, but I want to play those games now, just like all the other games that we talked about on this show. And with that, we are going to unfortunately have to wrap up. This was the first episode of Controller Conscience. I'm going to be doing more of this. Like I said, it's just, I'm at the mercy of if there is news stories coming up. I want this to kind of be a weekly thing, but I'm not sure if it is going to be a weekly thing. So I mean, I enjoyed doing this. Like, I wanted to, I liked what I did with Wii Talks, but Wii Talks were more of a filler to fill up the week. But I always wanted to do a podcast deep down, and I felt like Wii Talks were sort of becoming like the podcast, but I just wanted to get my face on it so I didn't have to go do gameplay stuff, because while that was good, but I feel like a lot of people were watching the gameplay rather than listening to the voiceover, and then you're like, wait, what's he talking about? Because I did that when I was doing the recap episode for E3. I was playing Halo 4 because I thought Halo 4 was the most, for me, the biggest announcement that I was most excited about. But I was having the best games of Halo 4 in my life, and I was just like, the gameplay is so good that I feel like a lot of people would have been looking at the gameplay and not really listening to what I was saying. And then when they started tuning in and started listening to what I was saying, they'd be like, oh, what's he saying? And then they would back up. But because it's an hour-long video, the backup is a lot more extreme than whatever the case may be. So That's it for this episode of We Talk. Oh, whoa, not We Talk. That's it for this episode of Controller Conscience Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me for the first ever episode, and I would love to do more. Hey, anything that we talked about, if you guys have an opinion on it, let me know down below. And I will see you guys on the next episode. Thank you for tuning in.